Imagine for a second, right, that you are just a completely ordinary human being.
No super strength.
Yeah, exactly. No super strength. You don't have magical powers. You definitely do not have, like, impenetrable sci-fi armor. You're equipped with little more than a mass-produced laser rifle.
Which is basically a heavy-duty flashlight.
Right, a heavy-duty flashlight. And you've got this set of flak armor that feels like it was made by the absolute lowest bidder.
Right.
And with just that meager gear, you are expected to hold the line in an endless, brutal war against literal demons from a hellish dimension.
Not to mention heavily armored, genetically engineered super soldiers who, want nothing more than to see humanity eradicated.
It's terrifying to even picture.
It really is. It is the ultimate asymmetrical warfare. Like, if you look at it from a tabletop gaming perspective, which is obviously where this universe originates, you are a unit that costs maybe 5 points.
Yeah.
And you're facing down entities that cost hundreds of points.
Yeah.
You are outmatched in every conceivable metric, physically, technologically, psychologically. And yet, the survival of the entire species relies entirely on you not running away.
Exactly. You are holding the line in a universe that doesn't even know your name. And honestly, if you die, your commanding officer is probably just going to step right over your body to get a better firing angle.
That's the grim reality of it.
So today, we're finding out what happens when you take the sprawling, demigod-filled universe of Warhammer 40,000 and force the camera down into the mud with the ordinary humans. We are cracking open Dan Abnett's 1999 classic military science fiction novel, First and Only.
And we really need to emphasize right up front that this isn't just a simple tie-in novel.
Right.
This is a foundational text. It was the very first book ever released under the franchise's Black Library Publishing imprint. It completely altered the DNA of how stories in this universe were told.
Because, up until August 1999, if you were reading fiction in this universe, you were reading about Space Marines.
Almost exclusively.
And for those who aren't steeped in the lore, Space Marines are these towering, biologically enhanced warrior monks. They have 2 hearts, they spit acid, their rib cages are fused into solid bulletproof plates. Oh, and they literally do not feel fear.
They are demigods.
Right. But it's really hard to build narrative tension when your protagonist is virtually invincible. Okay, let's unpack this. What did this book actually change?
Well, if a Space Marine gets shot, it's basically a minor inconvenience.
Right.
But if an ordinary soldier gets shot, it's a catastrophic trauma. What First and Only did was violently shift the lens away from those demigods and point it directly at the Imperial Guard.
Regular army.
Exactly. The massed armies of unenhanced humans. The men and women who bleed red, who get terrified, and whose only real advantage is sheer, overwhelming numbers and just stubborn grit.
I love the elevator pitch for this book. It's famously described as Bernard Cornwell's Sharp series in space.
It's an incredibly apt comparison. Abnett seamlessly takes that gritty, mud and blood reality of Napoleonic military historical fiction and just transplants it into the sprawling, gothic, sci-fi aesthetic of the 41st millennium.
So you have the muskets in the trenches.
Yeah, the trenches, the rigid class structures of the 19th century, but overlaid with laser volleys, orbital bombardments, and faster-than-light travel.
But you can't have a Sharp story without a Richard Sharp.
No, you can't.
So we have to talk about the man leading this regiment, because understanding him is really the key to understanding everything else. Our protagonist is Colonel Commissar Ibram Gaunt. Now, right off the bat, that title is a massive contradiction, isn't it?
Oh, it's an oxymoron. Colonel Commissar is an exceptionally rare, almost paradoxical combined rank. It merges political enforcement with direct military command.
Wait, hold on. So if you're hearing the word commissar and just picturing like a strict drill sergeant, you really need to recalibrate your expectations. Cause in historical terms, like in the Soviet Red Army, a commissar was a political officer. How does that translate into this grim sci-fi setting?
Well, in the Imperial Guard, commissars are figures of absolute institutional terror.
Right.
Their primary job is to enforce strict discipline and ideological purity among the troops. And the key thing is they stand completely outside the normal chain of command.
So they don't answer to the generals.
Exactly. If a military unit breaks and runs from a terrifying alien, or if even a general shows a moment of cowardice, the commissar is there to execute them on the spot.
Just like that.
Just a bullet to the back of the head. Zero trial, just to restore order. They are feared by their own side almost as much as the enemy.
So it's like if your company's HR enforcer, a military judge, and your battlefield general were all the exact same person. That sounds like an absolute recipe for a tyrant. How does Gaunt actually make this work without his men just I don't know, turning on him the second things get chaotic. Like, oops, friendly fire, right?
Right, the friendly fire accident, that is the exact tension Abnett plays with. Gaunt is described in the text as a bastard who wields immense, terrifying power. He has the authority to end any of his soldiers' lives with a single word.
Right.
But he subverts that traditional commissar trope because his authority isn't rooted in sadism or blind fanaticism. It's rooted in a highly calculated empathy. He actually genuinely cares for his men.
But he's not just a nice guy, though. Like, if he was just nice, they'd walk all over him in a setting like this.
Oh, absolutely. His empathy is a survival mechanism, both for him and his regiment. He is a non-hero in the traditional sense. He isn't out there swinging a sword looking for personal glory or trying to get his name in the history books.
He's just trying to survive.
Yeah, he is profoundly burdened by duty. The overarching duty to his government, sure, but more importantly, the micro-level duty to keep as many of his soldiers alive as possible in a universe that views them as entirely expendable meat for the grinder. He figures out that soldiers who trust you will fight 10 times harder than soldiers who are just terrified of you.
That honestly reframes the entire concept of leadership. You have this modern leadership dilemma pushed to its absolute extreme. Like, how do you balance having absolute life or death authority over a team with having genuine, deep empathy for that exact same team?
Oh, it's tightrope.
A massive tightrope. And Gaunt walks it every single day. And he has to walk it carefully because the specific group of people he is leading are incredibly damaged.
Yes. Gaunt's unique command style is entirely shaped by the tragic nature of his regiment. We really need to look closely at the Tanith first and only.
Yeah, let's talk about them. Because if you picture the Imperial Guard, you're probably picturing millions of soldiers in identical armor marching in lockstep, laying down wells of artillery fire.
Yeah.
The Taniths are the exact opposite of that.
They are light infantry, they don't have heavy tanks, they don't even wear heavy armor. Their home planet, Tanith, was heavily forested, mostly these giant shifting trees called knellwood.
Oh, right.
So they evolved to specialize as exceptional scouts, stealth operatives, and peerless marksmen. They wear these specialized camouflage cloaks that allow them to practically vanish into their surroundings. They are literal ghosts in the terrain.
And that nickname, Gaunt's Ghosts. It's not just a cool military call sign because they're sneaky. There is a massive, incredibly heavy emotional core to that identity.
Oh, definitely.
Because right as this regiment was being founded, literally right as they were mustering for their very first deployment, their homeworld of Tanith was attacked and completely destroyed by an overwhelming chaos invasion fleet. The planet just burned.
Turned to ash.
Yeah. So the regiment we follow in this book, they are the absolute last survivors of their entire planet's culture. There was no home to go back to.
What's fascinating here is the psychological weight of that status. It's staggering. When you and I think about a military unit, we think about soldiers fighting to protect their homes or fighting to return to their families.
Sure.
The Tanids don't have that luxury. They aren't just an elite unit deployed to win a war. They are fighting as the living memory of a dead world. Every single time one of them falls in battle, a piece of their culture, their specific dialect, their history, it's permanently extinguished from the universe.
Which raises a really dark question about their motivations. Does knowing you are the literal first and only make you fight with absolutely nothing to lose? Like a berserker who just throws themselves into the meat grinder because everything they ever loved is already gone? Or does it make you fiercely, overly cautious? Because if your regiment gets wiped out, your entire culture goes extinct.
It creates a fascinating, highly volatile paradox within their ranks, and you actually see both reactions in the text. Some of them do have a death wish, but collectively it pushes them into an incredibly tight, insular band of brothers mentality. The regiment is Tanith now. The barracks is their homeworld. And this shared trauma is what eventually cements their hard-won loyalty to Gaunt.
Because Gaunt is the one who made the call to leave, right?
Right.
When the planet was dying.
Yes. When the Chaos Fleet arrived, the newly formed regiment wanted to stay and die fighting for their dying planet.
They wanted to go down with the ship.
Exactly. It would have been a heroic, completely futile slaughter. But Gaunt, as their commander, made the cold, tactical decision to pull them out, load them onto transport ships, and run.
And they hated him for it.
They absolutely hated him initially. Some of them actively plotted to murder him for denying them a martyr's death alongside their families. But eventually, over time, they realized he gave them the one thing the enemy tried to take away.
Which is what?
Survival. The gift of survival and the chance to exact revenge.
Wow. So he saved their lives, but he condemned them to be ghosts. That is such a heavy burden for a commander to carry. To understand why Gaunt was capable of making a brutally pragmatic call like that and why he is so fiercely protective of this orphan regiment, Abnett doesn't just, hand us a monologue. The book forces you to piece together a structural puzzle about Gaunt's own past.
Right, and this leads directly into the novel's very unique narrative structure. First and Only relies heavily on a nonlinear timeline. It constantly charts events in Gaunt's early life, interspersed with the modern present-day conflict.
Which is pretty rare for military sci-fi, especially from the 90s. Usually it's just a straight chronological march from point A to point B, battle to battle.
It's extremely rare for this franchise. In fact, out of the nearly 20 books in this specific series, this is the only one that utilizes this flashback structure so extensively. Abnett slowly drips out the history that explains Gaunt's character, his motivations, and the complex political vendettas arrayed against him.
Let's actually map out these flashbacks because we get them chronologically, and they build this incredible psychological profile of who Gaunt is.
Let's do it.
The earliest memory we get takes us to a world called Manzapore. Gaunt is just 4 years old. Imagine this tiny kid, and he gets a visit from this imposing, highly decorated military figure, Uncle Dersius. Dersius was his father's commanding officer in a prestigious regiment called the Jantine Patricians. And Dersius just bends down, hands this 4-year-old kid a golden signet ring, and vaguely states that his father died in battle.
Just zero details.
Yeah, no details, nobody. Just, he's gone. Here's a ring, be a good boy.
It's the foundational trauma of Gaunt's life, a hollow explanation that leaves a massive psychological void. And we see how that void shapes him in the next major flashback, which takes place 28 years before the main story.
So he's older now.
Yeah, a 12-year-old Gaunt is on a planet called Ignatius Cardinal, attending an institution called the Schola Progenium.
Okay, we need to explain the Schola Progenium because it sounds like a fancy prep school, but it is so much darker than that. It's essentially a brutal military orphanage and brainwashing academy for the children of fallen officers, right?
That's the perfect way to describe it. It's where the Imperium takes traumatized orphans and molds them into its most elite, unfeeling tools.
Just a factory for soldiers.
Basically, it produces the Tempestus Scions, which are elite shock troops. It produces inquisitors, and notably, it produces commissars. They literally strip away your childhood and replace it with dogmatic loyalty to the state. Here, young Gaunt meets a fellow student named Vanem Blenner, who becomes his lifelong friend.
Right.
And we learn that Gaunt is studious, he is pious, he is everything the Scala wants him to be. But underneath it all, he is deeply obsessed with learning the classified truth about his father's death.
But every time he tries to look into his father's military records, he hits a brick wall. The information is heavily classified. It's locked away by the massive, impenetrable bureaucracy of the Imperium.
So he channels that immense frustration to his career. He decides that the only way to get the clearance to read those files is to literally climb the ranks himself.
That's dedication.
Yeah. And 18 years before the main story, on a world called Gelatus Decimus, we see a pivotal moment. Cadet Commissar Gaunt is finally promoted to the rank of full commissar, but he's promoted by his mentor, Commissar General Delane Oktar, while Oktar is literally dying from a poisoned wound.
Man, so once again, Gaunt's advancement in life is tied directly to the horrific loss of a father figure.
Exactly. It reinforces this grim thematic lesson that duty requires sacrifice, and usually it's the sacrifice of the people you care about most. He is learning that caring is inherently dangerous, which perfectly prepares him for the most unsettling flashback of all.
Oh, yeah.
This one is 20 years before the main events, on the ice world of Derendara.
This scene is incredible. Cadet Commissar Gaunt is leading the final assault on a rebel fortress. It's freezing, the conditions are just brutal. During the assault, they breach a bunker and capture a Chaos Witch.
And we should clarify what we mean by chaos in this setting for those who might not know.
Good idea.
The warp isn't just like hyperspace for faster than light travel. It is a literal alternate dimension composed of raw, turbulent emotion populated by demonic entities.
It's hell.
It is literal hell. When someone like this witch taps into chaos, they are pulling literal hell energy into reality. It causes physical mutations, madness, and reality-bending anomalies.
And this captured witch, she doesn't just curse at Gaunt. She looks past the other soldiers, right at him, and delivers a highly specific, haunting prophecy. She speaks of cutting the 7 stones and finding the ghosts.
Words that mean absolutely nothing to him at the time.
Right.
He doesn't have the Tanith regiment yet. There are no ghosts in his life.
No.
He doesn't know what the 7 stones are. It just sounds like the insane rambling of a corrupted mind.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because Gaunt doesn't just shrug it off. He carries this bizarre, unsettling prophecy in his head for 2 full decades. Imagine 20 years of waking up in a cold sweat, wondering what cutting the 7 stones means, just turning it over and over in your mind before it makes any sense whatsoever.
It's a heavy burden. And that narrative thread seamlessly bridges the flashback of the prophecy directly to the present day. Those very words, incubating in his mind for 20 years, are about to manifest in the most violent way possible on the forge world of Fortis Binary.
So let's transition from the past into the mud of the present. The setting of Fortis Binary is relentless. If you are unfamiliar with the lore, a Forge world is a planet entirely dedicated to producing the Imperium's war material. And don't picture a planet with some factories on it. Picture a planet that is a factory.
A giant machine.
Yeah, continents spanning industrial complexes, skies choked with black smog, oceans turned to chemical sludge. And it's all governed by the Adeptus Mechanicus, which is this bizarre cult of cyborg tech priests who literally worship machines.
And this vital manufacturing hub has been taken over by chaos-worshipping cultists called the Shriven. The entire planet has stopped producing tanks and started producing horrific rituals. So the Imperial Guard has to take it back.
And they have to take it back the hard way. They are fighting in the mud, in the trenches, in this ruined industrial waste against an enemy that feels no pain and doesn't care about casualties. And making matters infinitely worse, the Shriven aren't alone. They are allied with traitor space marines known as the Iron Warriors.
We talked earlier about how normal space marines are invincible demigods. A traitor space marine takes that same genetically engineered, heavily armored, biologically immortal warrior and corrupts them with the dark magic and demonic power of the warp we just discussed.
It's a nightmare scenario.
It really is. The Iron Warriors specifically are masters of siege warfare. They are ancient. Many have been fighting for 10,000 years. They view ordinary human soldiers as little more than insects to be crushed beneath their boots. Facing one Iron Warrior is usually a death sentence for a whole squad of regular humans.
So into this absolute nightmare steps Gaunt and his ghosts. They are embroiled in the last desperate stages of this brutal trench war. And the action really kicks off when Gaunt's young adjutant, a boy named Bryn Milo, uses his preternaturally keen hearing to warn Gaunt of an incoming massive artillery and infantry attack long before any of the electronic scanners pick it up.
Milo is such a fascinating wild card in this story. He's technically a civilian. He was a young musical prodigy, and he's the only non-combatant Gaunt pulled off Tanith before it burned.
Wow.
And he seems to have this uncanny, almost psychic intuition. His hearing literally saves the entire regiment here.
They get advanced warning.
Yeah, they are able to prepare just in time. The ghosts repel the assault and counterattack, pursuing the enemy into the industrial wasteland. But the terrain is a labyrinth of shattered factories and craters. The regiment becomes completely scattered and cut off.
Gaunt has to spend this harrowing night behind enemy lines, navigating this toxic chemical wasteland, just trying to reunite his men without being detected. It's a very tense, stealth-heavy sequence. He manages to pull pockets of them together, and in the process, they stumble onto a massive, accidental tactical advantage.
The maglev line.
Exactly, an underground Magriff transport line that leads straight past the frontline defenses and directly into a heavily fortified enemy ammo dump.
Which leads to one of the most intense, visceral set pieces in the entire book. Gaunt recognizes the opportunity. He doesn't just use his ghosts, though. He coordinates a joint assault, allying with another regiment on the field, the Vitrian Dragoons.
The visual contrast Abnett paints here is stunning. You have the ghosts in their mottled stealth cloaks, covered in mud and ash, blending into the shadows, and right beside them you have the Vitrian Dragoons, who wear this incredible, interlocking scale mail armor made of a hyper-durable, light-absorbing glass.
It creates a brilliant visual and tactical dynamic. The Dragoons provide the heavy assault element, while the ghosts infiltrate. But the visual beauty of the assault quickly gives way to sheer, visceral terror. They push into the ammo dump, thinking they're just clearing out standard cultists, but they uncover 2 Iron Warriors Chaos Space Marines guarding the facility.
And if you want to understand how a tabletop mechanic translates into narrative tension, this is it. On the tabletop, an Imperial Guardsman shooting a laser rifle at a Chaos Space Marine mathematically has almost zero chance of hurting it.
Basically impossible.
While the Space Marine will obliterate the Guardsman instantly, Abnett brings those math odds to life. Imagine being an ordinary human, rounding a corner in a dark warehouse and coming face to face with a 10-foot-tall corrupted demigod in spiked power armor whose gunfire is self-propelled explosive rockets.
It's terrifying.
The sheer pants-wetting terror of that close-quarters combat is palpable. The fact that any of the humans survive is a testament to Gaunt's tactical brilliance using explosives and the environment, and the Ghost's absolute rat-in-a-corner desperation.
And it's in the immediate, bloody aftermath of this fight that the prophecy from Durandara finally rears its head. The climax of the Fortis binary campaign doesn't end with bullets. It ends with an esoteric revelation.
Right, because Gaunt is exploring the depths of the conquered position, and he discovers this massive, corrupted, monolithic stone humming with dark energy. He confers with his tech priests and realizes this stone is part of a grand, planet-wide chaos ritual. There are 7 of these stones spread across the continent, being geometrically aligned to create some sort of massive, reality-tearing warp weapon that will wipe out the Imperial forces.
Now think about this. A lesser commander, or a more rigid, dogmatic commissar, would simply order the monolith destroyed immediately. You see a chaos artifact, you blow it up. That is the standard Imperial operating procedure.
Burn the witch, blow up the rock.
Exactly. But Gaunt's brilliance and his memory really shine here. He looks at the monolith, and he remembers the witch's words from 20 years ago, cutting the 7 stones. She didn't say destroy the 7 stones.
20 years later, the puzzle piece finally clicks into place.
He realizes that destroying this monolith with explosives might violently trigger the weapon, or it might fail to stop the ritual entirely, leaving the other 6 stones active. Instead, he orders his Mechanicus tech priests to interface with the stone. They have to use their sacred unguents, their mechadendrite cables, and screeching binary cant to forcibly realign the monolith's energetic frequency. He essentially hacks the geometry of the chaos ritual.
I love how you describe that, because hacking in this universe isn't typing on a keyboard. It's practically an exorcism mixed with computer science. And the effect of this realignment is instantaneous. By cutting the energetic tether of the 7 stones, it unleashes a psychic shockwave across the entire planet. It completely breaks the Shriven's will to fight.
Just snaps them out of it.
Yeah, the Chaos Cultists, who are being sustained by the frenzy of this ritual, suddenly snap out of it. They drop their weapons, terrified and confused. Gaunt just pulled the plug on their fanaticism. He then sets charges, blows the ammo dump to the sky, and completely destroys the enemy's main strategic position.
And in doing so, he decisively, almost single-handedly, wins the Fortis binary campaign. But we have to look at the political fallout of this. Gaunt didn't just beat the enemy. By moving so quickly and decisively through that maglev line, he deliberately stole the military glory from his rivals, the Jantine patricians, who were supposedly marching the long way around to take that exact objective.
The Jantine patricians. We heard that name earlier. Uncle Dercius, the man who handed Gaunt the ring, was from the Jantine patricians. The plot thickens. But surviving a chaos ritual and humiliating your political rivals is exhausting work. You can't have soldiers at maximum tension forever. After the literal mud and blood of Fortis Binary, the ghosts are sent for some desperately needed rest and recuperation on a civilian planet called Pyrites.
From a purely structural standpoint, Part 3, which is the Pyrite section, serves a vital literary function. It provides crucial pacing respite. You can't just have wall-to-wall trench warfare without exhausting the reader's capacity to care.
You need a breather.
Right. This section shifts the tone entirely, moving from grand strategy to intimate character development.
It's the moment the book proves that the ghosts are actually regular people. They aren't stoic, unfeeling killing machines like the Space Marines. When they get off the front line, they are traumatized, exhausted humans. They want to relax, they want to drink, they break curfew rules, and they get into petty scrapes with each other.
It deeply humanizes them. We follow squads of them exploring the lawless, neon-lit cold zones of Cratius City on Pyrites. The contrast between these grim, war-corn scouts and the relative luxury of a civilian city is stark.
Which, of course, does not go smoothly at all. You give a bunch of highly trained, deeply traumatized scouts some shore leave in a corrupt city controlled by local gangs, and suddenly you have a massive, chaotic shootout in a casino bar. Meanwhile, Gaunt isn't relaxing at all. He's using the downtime to do some clandestine intelligence gathering regarding the broader crusade. He goes to a secret meeting in the city with a high-level contact, but the contact is assassinated by sniper fire right in front of him before he can hand over the information.
The war follows them, even on leave. The assassination attempt forces Gaunt to go on the run through the city streets. But this chase sequence leads to one of the most iconic, defining moments for Gaunt as a character and for his relationship with his men.
Yes, the lads moment. This is my favorite scene. Let me set it up. God is being actively hunted through the back alleys of Krasha City, but he's not being hunted by chaos cultists. He's being hunted by soldiers of the rival Janpine patricians, who are using the chaos of the city to try and quietly assassinate him. He's running for his life alongside his old Skala friend Blenner and young Bryn Milo.
Right.
They burst through a door of what they think is an abandoned building trying to escape, and they literally run straight into a massive group of his own ghosts, who are in the middle of a massive illegal drunken party.
The tension in this room is palpable. The Jantine patricians are mere seconds behind them. Gaunt is the strict, terrifying Colonel Commissar, the man who executes cowards. He has just caught his men breaking a dozen military regulations. How is he going to react?
And what does he do? He pauses, looks at his stunned, terrified men. He reaches out, grabs a bottle of liquor from the hand of one of the soldiers, takes a massive swig, wipes his mouth, looks back at the door, and simply says, "Lads, I could do with a hand."
It is brilliant, incredibly efficient character writing.
It really is. It reframes his entire command style. This is the exact moment he stops being just their imposing commander and becomes their brother. The room erupts. It's a classic chaotic bar brawl that spills out into the street, with the ghosts gleefully beating the absolute tar out of the patricians to protect their commander. But that one line, that shared drink, it relies on vulnerability. By asking for their help instead of ordering it, he cements their unbreakable loyalty.
It grounds this high sci-fi Gothic setting in very relatable earthly military traditions. The inter-service rivalry trope, the idea that soldiers will fight the enemy, but they will also absolutely throw hands with the regiment billeted next door. It adds such a thick layer of realism. It makes the world feel lived in and fundamentally human.
But surviving a gang war and a barroom brawl on leave is child's play compared to surviving your own high command. As the crusade moves out from Pyrites and heads toward a mysterious region of space called the Menezoid Clasp, that inter-service rivalry mutates into full-blown treason.
Yes, the stakes escalate dramatically. The ghosts and their bitter rivals, the Jantine patricians, are forced to be billeted on the exact same massive Mechanicus transport ship during the long transit through the warp to the next war zone.
And we need to emphasize the scale of these ships. They aren't just large boats. A Mechanicus transport is the size of a flying city. It holds millions of people, sprawling decks, cavernous cargo holds, and claustrophobic lower decks. Putting these two regiments in a metal box together after a bar brawl is a recipe for absolute disaster.
Tensions completely boil over. It goes from throwing punches in the mess hall to open conflict and actual targeted murders in the unmonitored lower decks between the regiments. It is a powder keg.
And while the infantrymen are slitting each other's throats in the dark, the novel introduces a complex political thriller element in the upper echelons that really takes over the main plot. The war against the alien and the demon becomes entirely secondary to a terrifying conspiracy within the Imperial High Command itself.
And the whole plot revolves around what is basically a massive narrative MacGuffin, a Vermilion-level astropathic message.
Wait, if we're explaining how the universe works, we need to explain astropaths because it is so incredibly grim. How does faster-than-light communication work when you don't have digital radios?
It is honestly horrific. An astropath is a sanctioned psychic mutant. To send a message to another star system, they have to telepathically scream it through the hell dimension of the warp to another astropath on the other side.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and the process of binding them to the Emperor's will literally burns their eyes out of their skulls.
That is awful.
So a message sent this way is incredibly rare and valuable. Vermilion level means it is classified to the absolute highest degree. Only the very top theater commanders are even supposed to know it exists, let alone read it.
And this specific intercepted message exposes a sweeping treasonous conspiracy. We are introduced to a trio of antagonists who are entirely human, but almost more terrifying than the Chaos Marines because of the institutional power they wield. First, you have Lord High Militant General Drawbear, who is desperately trying to use the secret information in this message to usurp control of the entire military crusade from the current War Master, Slato.
Then you have Colonel Flint's, the leader of the Jantine patricians. He's acting as the blunt instrument, the muscle for Dravere. Flens has a deeply personal, obsessive grudge against Gaunt that borders on the pathological. He isn't just following orders, he actively wants Gaunt dead.
And finally, the puppeteer pulling all the strings from the shadows, Golish Haldane. He is an Inquisitor, and in Warhammer 40,000, an Inquisitor answers to absolutely no one except the Emperor himself. They have limitless, unquestionable authority to read out heresy. They can order the destruction of entire planets. But Haldane is corrupt. He is using his limitless power to manipulate this political conspiracy for his own dark ends.
Haldane is utterly terrifying because he doesn't just use political power, he wields psychic power as a weapon of sheer domination. He can physically compel people to do his bidding.
So what does this all mean? We have a war against chaos on the outside and a war of naked ambition on the inside. What is Abnett trying to say here with this shift in the narrative?
It leads us to one of the book's major thematic pillars, the cost of power. The text is explicitly arguing that the internal corruption, the naked ambition, and the labyrinthine, uncaring bureaucracy of the Imperium are just as deadly to humanity as the literal demons of the warp. Perhaps even more so because the rot comes from within. You can shoot a demon. You can't shoot a bureaucratic conspiracy.
You see, the terrifying reality of that rot and the close calls Gaunt and his men have to survive while trapped on the ship. Gaunt is nearly assassinated in his own private quarters by a psi-controlled puppet. A perfectly normal soldier whose mind has been completely hijacked by Inquisitor Haldane just walks in and tries to kill him. It's insidious. You can't just fight that with a tactical flanking maneuver. It's a psychic attack from a supposed ally.
And the escalation continues when the Jantine patricians brazenly kidnap Major Ron, Gaunt's second-in-command, taking him deep into the bowels of the ship to be tortured by Haldane. Now, Ron is a fascinating character because he actually actively hates Gaunt.
Oh yeah, he wants him dead.
Ron is one of the men who wanted to die on Tanith. He has sworn to kill Gaunt one day, but despite that hatred, he is still a ghost.
And Gaunt, true to his character, doesn't leave his people behind, even the ones who want him dead. He sends a specialized ghost stealth rescue team into the depths of the ship. It's an incredibly intense, claustrophobic horror movie sequence. They manage to infiltrate the Inquisition's holding area, recover Ron, and in the process, they actually manage to severely wound Inquisitor Haldane.
Which is insane.
It is virtually unheard of. You do not cross the Inquisition, shoot one of them in the face, and live to tell the tale.
But the die is irreversibly cast. As the fleet finally makes planetfall on the Menazoid class, the conspiracy is laid bare. Gaunt knows exactly what is happening, and he knows he has to stop General Draver from claiming whatever dark, ancient power is hidden on the planet's surface that the Vermilion message pointed to.
Which brings us to the climax of the novel, the moment where the ghosts of Gaunt's past literally violently collide with the enemies of his present.
The novel sets the stage for the climax by framing it within the classic, desperate military trope of a one last stand. The ghosts, already battered, exhausted, and vastly outnumbered, realize they are completely isolated on the battlefield. The Allied regiments are far away. They have to hold a vital trench line against the full armored weight of the Jantine patricians.
It's a suicide mission.
Basically.
Yeah.
The patricians have the numbers, they have the heavy weapons, and their only goal is to wipe the ghosts off the map to secure the path for Draver.
And it's during this absolute crucible, with artillery raining down and the line about to break, that everything clicks. All the breadcrumbs the author dropped over the last 300 pages are swept up. The grandiose reveal happens. The flashbacks to his childhood on Manzapore, the locked military files, the political maneuvering of the patricians, it suddenly all locks together in this brilliant, devastating moment.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Gaunt finally discovers the classified, dark truth about his father's death. Do you remember Uncle Dursius from the very beginning? The man who bent down and handed the 4-year-old Gaunt a signet ring.
Yes, the heroic commanding officer.
He wasn't a grieving comrade. He wasn't a hero. He was coward. During a brutal engagement decades ago against a terrifying orc incursion, Dursius broke. He abandoned his vital position, fleeing the field and betraying Gaunt's father to a gruesome death just to save his own skin.
Wow.
He then used his immense political connections and family wealth to completely classify the after-action reports, covering up his cowardice and writing his false reputation to the very top of the military hierarchy.
And the absolute kicker. Uncle Dursius is now a high general. He is the man giving Colonel Flentz the direct orders to wipe out Gaunt and the ghosts on Menazoid. The man whose cowardice destroyed Gaunt's family is the exact same man trying to destroy his regiment right now.
It fundamentally shifts the conflict. It moves from a professional military engagement about securing an objective into an intensely personal, blood-soaked quest for revenge and redemption. Gaunt isn't just fighting to protect the Imperium anymore. He is fighting to avenge his father's honor and excise a cancer from the military. If you think about it in tabletop terms, the ghosts are holding the line against the troops, while Gaunt makes a beeline to take out the enemy HQ unit.
And the resolution is incredibly satisfying and bloody. Gaunt manages to break through the lines and confront Dercius directly in a brutal melee duel. He exposes the cowardice to Dercius' own men, and in his absolute authority as a commissar, he formally executes Dercius for treason and cowardice in the face of the enemy.
It's perfectly legal.
Right. It is a perfectly legal execution for a 20-year-old crime. He achieves his lifelong quest for answers. But in doing so, he sparks a massive, irreconcilable blood feud with the surviving members of the Jantine patricians that will absolutely drive the plots of future books in the series.
It's a high-cost victory, but the immediate existential threat is neutralized. With the patricians leaderless and broken, Lord Draver's grand plan crumbles. Colonel Flens is defeated in single combat by Gaunt, and the deeply injured Inquisitor Heldane's psychic machinations are halted when his command vehicle is destroyed.
The Crusade is saved from total anarchy and civil war. Gaunt has finally overcome the childhood trauma that defined his entire life. The mystery is solved, and by standing in the mud with his men against impossible odds, he has secured his regiment's future. He solidifies his role not just as a commander, but as a true hero to his men. It's a highly satisfying, self-contained, full-circle ending that perfectly tees up an ongoing series. They survive the grinder to fight another day.
And that leads us to step back and evaluate the book not just as a thrilling sci-fi venture, but as a piece of literature. What is its legacy? Why does a book from 1999 still resonate so strongly that we are doing a deep dive on it today?
Well, looking at the critical praise, it's easy to see why it successfully kicked off an entire publishing empire. The novel is widely lauded for its highly engaging, kinetic prose. Dan Abnett doesn't just write action. He writes visceral, grounded scenes where you can practically smell the ozone from the lasguns and feel the terror of the artillery barrages. But he perfectly pairs that kinetic energy with deeply relatable, sympathetic characters.
That balance is crucial to its success. His masterful ability to shift from high-octane, gory action on a forge world to quiet, introspective, melancholy sequences about a destroyed homeworld is what elevates the material. It is widely considered an absolute masterclass in pacing once it gets going. It treats the tabletop game's lore with absolute respect. Every weapon, every rank, every alien feels accurate to the rulebooks, but it filters all of that through deeply human, fragile experiences.
But, to be fair and analytical, it does have its weaknesses. We can't pretend it's flawless. A lot of critics, and honestly even some hardcore fans, note that the first third of the book is incredibly slow. It has a massive amount of heavy lifting to do. It has to establish this sprawling galactic universe, explain the complex dual role of a Colonel Commissar, introduce an ensemble cast of dozens of ghosts, and set up the political landscape. It can feel like wading through molasses for the first 100 pages.
And from a narrative construction standpoint, the plot does rely somewhat heavily on prophecy and coincidence. Gaunt just happening to stumble upon the specific chaos monolith that perfectly matches the highly specific 20-year-old prophecy from the Ice World is a bit contrived. It's a convenient shortcut, it's also an older book, and it shows its age. There are moments of lack of clarity in the plot where the rapid transitions between the childhood flashbacks and the chaotic present-day battles can feel slightly disjointed if you aren't paying close attention.
But despite those minor structural flaws, it leaves us with one incredibly powerful, lingering theme to think about: the irony of honor.
Yes, this is the beating heart of the book. The ghosts and Gaunt himself are honorable soldiers. They fight for the man next to them, they try to do the morally right thing, they don't leave their wounded behind, and they refuse to break the line. But they are trapped in a fundamentally, deeply dishonorable universe.
Right.
Their heroism is constantly mocked, exploited, or ignored by the very allies they're bleeding to protect. The Jantine patricians look down on them as feral scum. General Draver sees them as entirely expendable pawns on a chessboard. The setting is intensely grim, emphasizing that being a good, honorable person in this universe doesn't get you a medal. It often just paints a massive target on your back.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We've gone from the suffocating mud and terror of the trenches on Fortis Binary to the convoluted, treacherous conspiracies of the Imperial High Command. And anchoring it all was a non-traditional hero, a commissar burdened by a conscience, leading a band of tragically displaced scouts who have lost their world but managed to forge brotherhood in the ashes. First and only, Proved once and for all that fiction based on a plastic tabletop game could have genuine, bleeding literary heart.
It raises such an important, lasting point about the nature of the setting itself. If the overarching theme of the novel is that the Imperium's own bureaucracy, its staggering ambition, and its internal betrayals are just as deadly as the alien and demonic threats outside it, it begs an essential philosophical question.
Lay it on us. What's the takeaway?
When survival requires participating in a system that is fundamentally corrupt and actively grinds human life into dust, is holding on to your personal honor a dangerous luxury that will eventually get you killed? Or is it the absolute only thing keeping you from becoming the very monsters you are fighting in the dark?
That reframes the entire story. It's not just about surviving the war, it's about surviving with your soul intact. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. Keep exploring, keep seeking out new perspectives, and remember, even when the universe is entirely stacked against you, even when the command structure is broken and you're surrounded by enemies in the dark, sometimes all it takes to change the tide is one leader with enough humanity to stand up, drop the rank, and say, "Lads, I could do with a hand. We will see you next time."